And we are back here on FOX59 Tonight, continuing our conversation about back to school bus safety. We told you about what drivers need to do, but there are a lot of things that school districts and bus companies, transportation departments have to do to keep those buses safe, keep them on the road so that everybody is safe, to keep that title as the safest mode of transportation. There's a lot that goes into it, and every year we get to spend time with our friends at the Indiana State Police, and we love it, don't we, Gary?
We do indeed. We do.
We do. We've got a good set of troopers that, at least for us, cover the central Indiana area. There's other troopers down south and up north that really know their school districts. But your job, Nate, in the school bus division for the Indiana State Police is to make sure those buses are safe to get on the road. What all does your job entail?
Yeah, so like you're aware, I work with the commercial vehicle division. So outside of buses, I'm looking at semis, hazmat tankers, and then daily I'm with bus drivers for a good chunk of my day. Typically, we'll go to each school district at least once a year, and we'll be there for anywhere from 2 or 3 days to a couple weeks, depending on the size of the school. And when we're doing those inspections, we are looking at every aspect of the bus. We start off, we'll check the lights, make sure everything seems to be functioning properly, make sure there's no body damage. We'll then go through, we'll creep under the bus, we'll look at all the mechanicals. We'll make sure none of the steering components or braking components have any issues. Make sure that they're good and functional to take children, and then we'll hop on the bus, continue checking, making sure the aisles are clear, the emergency windows are working, the seats are in good order, just to make sure that that bus is in spec and able to be taking students properly. So every bus gets a inspection by a trooper minimum one time a year. It's been determined that buses that are 12 years old or older have the privilege of being inspected twice because that is when it was determined they tend to break down and have more problems. So for the schools that have those older buses, we do look at those at least twice a year.
How I don't know if you guys have tracked this at all. Hang on, hit the wrong button. Lots of buttons over here. Has there been any determination or tracking of those older buses to see, now that you're looking at them twice as much, are there more problems with them, or does it seem to just kind of force the district to just pay that much more attention to those buses so they still pass?
I would say it's just the added benefit of making sure they're still being upkept. A lot of school districts will tell you, as I'm sure you're all aware, that once that bus hits 12 years old, there's a lot more money involved in keeping it up and keeping it roadworthy.
Yep.
So the twice a year inspections, just the added benefit of letting the public know that their children's bus, grandkids' bus is safe to be utilized. So with that, a good time to throw out, if you would like to see how your kids' buses have performed in the state inspections, there is a website you can go to. If you just simply type in Google Indiana State Police School Bus Inspections, you'll get landed on a page where you can pick the county you live in, pick your school district, and then plug your child's bus number in. You can see when it last passed our inspection, and I believe on the public side you can see some of those historic inspections. So maybe when we were going through, alarm wasn't working on the bus and the school got it fixed, you'll see that problem might have existed, and 2-3 days later we re-inspected it and the school had it back in functioning order.
Well, I'm just clicking on schools here as you talk. We can see the website. So we picked on Beech Grove just because they start with the B, and they were on the first page. But this gives you an idea of all of the bus. It gives you a pretty detailed report of what, in this case, I would tell you what, if anything was wrong with the bus. If everything was great with the bus, it just says pass.
And the nice thing about it too, I think the first set of numbers it shows you is the first time pass rating.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, which is important, but I think the most important number for folks is to know, hey, this is the current status of my fleet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that second set of numbers, and that shows, okay, well, currently the status of my school's fleet, how many of those buses are in service currently. And so I do think that's, that it's nice that our families can look out there and see. And you can also go out and look at the history of, your vehicle's inspections, your student's bus that they ride, and you can see, what things might have been caught, because we've got phenomenal mechanics. They do a tremendous job, and they keep our buses up and going throughout the year. But occasionally there might be something, they find, and so that's why the relationship with the state police is important, just to help us make sure that we're keeping these buses safe, and we're keeping them the safest method of transportation for our kids.
Well, we're showing off Carmel Clay Schools, your numbers to be proud of there.
Yeah, we look good. Thank you.
And so as you were talking about, you've got the first time the buses were seen by the state police, and then some of those buses then get looked at again if something was missed by the mechanic team or by the driver, because we're looking, in your case, you're looking at 163 buses.
Yeah.
Sure, there may be something that gets overlooked or missed,
Sure.
or there's also a thing that we all enjoy, and that is the trooper's discretion.
Oh, yeah.
So there could be something that you and I look at and say, it's good to go because we're reading the book and that looks good. But trooper discretion also could say, well, I don't really like the way that looks.
Yep.
And that could change that. And that doesn't, again, it reflects your score, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your buses are unsafe or anything.
Well, and I think the important thing too is in your response to it. So if they find, I think Nate and the other folks on the crew that do our Central Indiana inspections, they know that Carmel Clay Schools and many other school districts, the minute they identify something, we're not in the habit of arguing with our state troopers, and so they tell us, hey, this is an issue. We'll immediately pull it into the next bay. We get it addressed. We get it knocked out. We put it through the same inspection. Hopefully the same day, like just put it in line a little bit later. So they're very good about that. And, it's important for us to be able to catch that. And then I did want to mention too, as we talk about vehicles that are 12 years and older, Indiana, I don't know if it's the same nationally, but I know because of that 12-year rule, Indiana, most school districts also develop what's called a bus replacement plan, and typically for most school districts, their default is a 12-year bus replacement schedule. So the idea is to try and get buses traded out before they would get to that 12-year threshold where, mechanically they may just start having some issues. And honestly, in Indiana, it's not even so much mechanical because our mechanics are so good they can keep them rolling no matter what. But at some point, the Indiana weather and the salt will eat through that body and eat through the step wells and that kind of stuff. And, it's just not, we don't want to have Flintstones buses on the road.
Well, and I would say that a 12-year-old bus or a 13-year-old bus isn't any safer or doesn't have any fewer problems than a brand new bus.
Correct.
It just costs more to now fix it.
Yes.
Because as you know, you can get a brand new bus, and as you've seen, brand new bus come from the factory and have issues. So it's not really a safety thing. No. It's a cost thing. Now that bus is out of its warranty. Yeah. So what at a problem, if it had that same problem in 5 years, it's going to get paid for. It's free.
Yeah.
But now that same problem at 13 years, well, that's going to cost the district a little more. Let's get rid of that bad boy.
Well, I think that's an important point too, because that does bring up, or make me at least think of Senate Enrolled Act 1 and some of the recent changes that have come with property tax relief for homeowners. So one of the impacts, I don't know how many people know that school transportation is funded through the operating fund, the operations fund for school districts, which means we're exclusively funded through property taxes. So I think one of the at least projected impacts of Senate Enrolled Act 1 has been a loss of funds for school districts from property taxes. So what we may see is more and more school districts that are going to keep their buses for a bit longer because they may not have the financial wherewithal to replace them all at 12 years any longer. And then you couple that with inflation, and we've seen some really large increases in the cost of brand new buses, just related to supply chain costs, material costs, tariffs, any of those things. And so I think as you see those prices increasing and you see the amount of funding decreasing with as a result of Senate Enrolled Act 1, we're going to see more districts having to make difficult decisions with how long they want to keep their buses. And then, like you said, it's not so much a safety issue, because if it's out of service, if it's got something that it can't roll with, we're not going to put it on the road. But it is going to cost that district extra money to keep that repaired, and so we're going to have to get creative on how we do that without compromising the safety of our students.
Do you think? What do you think more districts will choose? Do you think they'll say let's keep them and just stretch them out longer, or because the argument could be made both ways, that it's going to cost you more to keep this bus versus it's going to cost you more. A new school bus is what, $170,000 to
correct
$200,000.
I think you may see some districts that start changing the type of buses that they're ordering, because I think some of your styles of buses, like your conventional buses that have the nose on the front, those may tend to be a little cheaper than your flat nose transit type D buses. The trade-off there is maneuverability and turning radius. And so some of your more suburban and urban districts that have really tight spaces we've got to get into, it may not be as good of a solution for that, but you may find districts that have longer stretches or country roads that start to opt for, that cheaper option. And then, like I said, I think we may find districts that are really having to do a value proposition of how long can I go with this bus being safe for students and being roadworthy before I have to swap it out, before I have to buy a new one. I think other districts are looking at maybe different types of funding. Some districts who would normally self-pay, and they would have a bus replacement fund built into their operations fund. I think some of them may start looking at financing options, or they may look at lease-to-own options, that kind of thing. Which, it just really depends on the financial wherewithal. And I think a lot of school districts don't quite know yet what the whole financial impact will be with Senate Enrolled Act 1. I think we know it will be significant. I just don't think we know how significant. And some are obviously more impacted than others. Carmel Clay Schools has we have obviously our operations fund, but we also have two referenda in place. We have an operating referendum, and we have a school safety referendum, and both of those play into the property tax funding, and so both of those would be impacted in terms of the amount of funding that the district would get. So I think maybe some of those districts that have more of those in place might have more of an impact to their funding for their operations fund.
Nate, would you say that a new school bus can have the same problems as a 12-year-old bus straight from a new bus straight from the factory have the same problems as a 12-year-old bus sometimes?
I don't know that I'd go that far.
Okay.
I will say that we had one particular week we looked at 15 buses from the same manufacturer, brand new buses. They came from the same dealer here in Indiana. And of those 15 buses, 12 of those failed because from the factory, it wasn't maintained properly, wasn't put together properly. That being said, with the 12-year-old, now you're getting those worn parts. You've got a lot more that goes into the upkeep of it, as opposed to where you might have a airline that's not working properly on a new bus. That older bus, you may have to replace the entire wheel end, which has a much higher cost. Not only for being out of warranty, but because of what it entails.
Yeah.
And really, that's the part that makes sense why you would want to check it twice as much, because if it's going to cost me twice as much, maybe I'm like, well, we're going to stretch this out for a little bit before we replace it.
Exactly.
And then things are going unchecked for longer than they should. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, it's, I think things we see, because we see these on our new buses as well. We'll order new buses, we get them from the factory, and then, we've got, they tend to be more quality issues. Like Nate said, it could be a hose that wasn't connected properly, or it could be like the undercoating, that we put under buses to help with rust prevention. Maybe that wasn't quite attaching very well, wasn't adhering very well. So we've had, things like that. And then of course our dealer will take it back, and it's all warranty work that they'll get fixed. But yeah, once you get into more significant issues where you're talking about frame and you're talking about parts where you're going to have to disassemble a significant portion of the bus to get to it and replace it, you're talking about significant cost, but also significant downtime for that unit. So that's it can be difficult, especially if, and then your spare buses are probably not newer than the bus that just went out of commission. So now you're just moving the problem over to another unit.
And because we picked on Gary, I'll show my own results.
Very good. Very good.
On the dashboard. We're all passed. We're all good right now.
Yep.
We actually just had, we took a bus to inspection this week. And this is one of those.
I think I might have been the one to do the inspection.
Were you? Was it the wheelchair?
It was.
The wheelchair. Yeah. So we the day before that you got to it, it was a different trooper. The wheelchair, they get misaligned when you drive, and then they won't come down.
Yeah, she shakes a little bit and then won't extend.
And so we fixed it. All you got to do is push it back in, and it'll catch itself. But that was one of those things where it gets caught, or it's like, no, it's not a safety thing. It's just it just didn't work when you looked at it. It worked 5 seconds ago.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing, too. If you start looking at your school district's report, keep in mind that these are machines. The buses will have things go wrong. What we typically see is when we show up at a school, you'll have a line of mechanics and drivers going through their buses. They're checking the lights. They're checking everything that they know we're going to look at. Inevitably, between them checking it and that bus coming into the garage for us to inspect it, there's going to be a light out on a portion of buses. Things happen, we realize that, and we help the schools try to strive to get to that 100%. 100% on the first time through really isn't achievable, but the closer we get to it, the better.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think I always, especially when reporters always do that story about, oh, this district had X amount of buses that needed to be repaired. Well, if you read it, it was because his trash can wasn't bolted down. Like, were the kids in some kind of danger that they were, that the bus shouldn't have been on the road? You have to actually look and give. And I've also seen it where we've checked the bus, lights are working right there, pulling in, light went out. Just that fast.
Yep.
Or it could be a name tag that was obstructing some of the lettering for an emergency exit row and that kind of stuff, but which is important. You want to, if that bus is in operation, you don't want there to be any question about what that exit is. But yeah, like you mentioned, it's not something that's inhibiting the physical safety of the vehicle, but there's a guideline. There's a book, a manual that they have for inspections, and I don't know how many points are on there, several hundred.
A lot.
But that all of those things need to be met in order for a school bus to be considered roadworthy. So
I believe it's Indiana Administrative Code 575, if I'm not mistaken, and that's where the bus manual comes from.
Yep.
But it is a very lengthy document that entails all of those items.
Yep.
So we try to keep it very, trying to think of the right way to put this. We want to make it uniform. That way, what happens in Gary is happening down in Versailles, also is happening in Evansville and here in Indianapolis.
And it helps everything be objective. Everything is, everything is by the book. Everything's uniform, and it helps prevent any deviation in any district from saying, "Oh, I feel I was unfairly targeted about this," or whatever this might be. So, just. We've again got a good relationship with our troopers, and we appreciate the work that they do. And they for those inspection days, they work really hard to get through all of our buses and make sure they're roadworthy. And they work with us on our schedules, so we try and get them in between when we're running routes. They do a good job for us, and our mechanics, they enjoy working with them.
Well, on here on the state website, I was trying to pull up somewhere on here. It tells you how many buses there are across the state. And it's a lot.
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah.
There's over 16,000, I believe.
And there's how many of you?
We're slated for 20, but we don't have 20 troopers that do it. So maybe someday we'll be back up to full staff and doing that. But I know here in Indianapolis, fortunately, yesterday we got one of our 2 vacancies filled. So now we have 3 troopers that are responsible for inspecting roughly 4,500 buses. So
that's more than 25% of the state's buses that are just in central Indiana with your unit. So, yeah.
Well, and I was doing it, if you divided it evenly, if you did a 16,000 even divided by a fully staffed 20, that would put every trooper looking at 800 buses a year.
Yeah, and that's at the minimum. So don't forget,
Right.
there's a lot of
The
12-year-old
reinspection.
buses.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Re-inspections, new registrations, because that technically would be if you, depending on what time of year you get your
Yes.
bus,
Yep.
it gets inspected twice a year.
Correct.
So yeah, at minimum 800
Yeah.
buses, and then it's not proportionate because it's based on where you are. So
well, and Nate, I think your sergeant had mentioned to us as well in our board report that the average first-time pass rating was something like 83%, something around there.
Yeah, I believe 84 for this year currently.
Yeah, so for the whole state. So I don't know how that stacks up against previous years, but I don't know what the comparison is. But yeah, so that's that first-time pass rating, and then obviously the districts then have the opportunity to repair those and put it back through, and hopefully we're all currently ready to go.
We're all looking good. First day of school coming up here. So for some people, it's already started, which is ridiculous because it's like 100 degrees outside, pretty much.
Yeah.
So more districts. Do you have air conditioning on your buses?
We have them on our special needs buses, but we don't have them on our gen ed fleet. Yeah.
Are people pushing for that?
I'll tell you what, man, it gets really hot inside there. The joke is that the air conditioning on our buses is, put the windows all down and get up to around, 35, 40 miles an hour. And that's as good as it gets. But no, I mean, there's discussion about it. It's not even so much obviously we have financial impacts due to that we don't know about for Senate Enrolled Act 1. But in addition to the cost, I think typically for an air conditioning unit on a full size, 84 passenger bus like ours is around $12,000 to $14,000 extra on top of bus cost. But really what we find is the service and maintenance of them. It tends to be from districts that have them as standard on their buses. I hear that is typically the number one item that puts a bus in the shop for repair. So I think you tend to have a lot more downtime with a bus because you're constantly having to deal with issues related to that. So.
And what will be the point of having air conditioning? It's not going to work.
Sure. I mean, yeah, we're certainly not against it, but it's just one of those right now. I think a lot of districts are having to make value propositions. And since we don't really know what the financial impact will be, we're trying to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We just have to know how many taxpayer dollars we have. And we don't ever want the public to think that we're not being conscientious about how that's spent.
Well, I can tell you from the conference that I was just at, the buses aren't going to get cheaper.
No.
They talked about the cost, and they talked about the states are, like our state, collecting less tax money.
Yep.
But the cost of the bus is going up because of tariffs in part. But just also the cost in general to make everything is going up. So it's like, how do you get through all of this? But this is something that the industry types I don't know that we'll figure it out, but we'll try to get through.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and then keep in mind as well, something we still are struggling with at Carmel Clay Schools, and I know other districts are as well, is at the same time we're dealing with these challenges, we're still dealing with a fairly significant bus driver shortage.
Yes.
So we're continuing. We've made great strides this summer. We've hired, I believe we've got nearly 10 people that have been onboarded and trained and gotten their CDL, and they'll be certifying at the start of the school year. And, typically the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, we've hired between 25 and 30 drivers per year. But just due to attrition and due to retirements, and we get a lot of our drivers are already retired from one career, and so eventually they want to really retire. They want to not wake up at 5 in the morning, and so we certainly understand that.
So
and
you're hiring?
We want to keep them for as long as we can. But yes, Carmel Clay Schools is hiring for school bus drivers and bus aides. So if anybody's interested, feel free to visit our website, and we would love to have you.
And Nathan, I'm sure your folks would like you people to know that you guys are hiring too.
We are always hiring. So I believe last I was told we're tentatively going to have another hiring process in February for laterals. So any current officer that's got 3 years on with another department can come over to us. We've revamped our policy or our academy, so it's down to 8 weeks and it's not consecutive. So if you've been through the academy, you've got 3 years on, you can come. I believe it's in 2-week segments. So come to the academy for 2 weeks. You'll do a little bit of field training. Of course, once this cycle goes through, they may change that up. But then in the summer next year, we're going to have a traditional academy again, tentatively. So anybody that's interested in a career in law enforcement, as long as you're between the ages of 21 and 40, we'd love to have you come out and apply. And if this is the career for you, plenty of opportunity.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for the insight. This would be a good industry podcast that a lot of people can get some information on. And but it just goes to show people don't think about all the things that it takes. We spend an hour just talking about transportation, getting ready for school. Yeah. So people don't realize all the things that it takes just to get a school district ready to go.
We didn't even discuss the drug and alcohol audits.
That's right.
I know.
That's a whole nother session.
Yeah, I always tell people, I say it may not always be fun, and it may not always be what you want it to be, but it is never boring.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever gone to work in the 12 years that I've been doing this and said, man, I'm bored today. So
correct.
It's always something new, something exciting going on. But we enjoy it, and we enjoy keeping our kids safe.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for coming on and talking with us and sharing your knowledge of what you do so people can get a better understanding of one, stop for the bus. I mean, I don't know how many times you have to say this. The sign says stop. Yep. It's got flashing lights. Red universally flashing means stop. I don't know how many ways we can say this. I think there's even some stop arms that flash the word stop.
Hey, we'll add some blue lights in to help drive the point home.
Apparently so. That. More lights.
There
more
we go.
Lights.
Those blue lights are effective.
That too. Yeah, if you see some blue lights behind the red lights, now you got another problem. Mm-hmm. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Fox 59 Tonight. Thanks for joining us. We'll have more conversations like this every night at 8 o'clock right here on Fox 59 Now. Good night.